What free speech is and how we should go about using or limiting it has been a contentious subject on campuses across the country. Chico State invited University of California, Berkeley Dean Erwin Chemerinsky to the campus to speak about speech.
You'll notice what I didn't mention is a category of unprotected speech. Hate speech. That's because hateful speech is generally protected by the First Amendment.
Chemerinsky heads the Berkeley Law School and has written books about free speech before and has extensive knowledge on the topic. We caught up with him after the speech for an interview. In your opinion, has free speech in our society increased or decreased?
Of course, it's compared to when and compared to what, but I would say over the course of American history, there's been much more protection for free speech. I think if you look at the Supreme Court over the course of American history, it's become increasingly more speech protective.
Great. And you kind of touched on people feeling threatened by free speech, but I have heard arguments that unbridled free speech can lead to actual and physical harm to people, and then that is the reason why we should limit forms of hate speech or really aggressive speech in that manner. How do you feel about that argument?
There's no evidence that stopping hate speech has any relationship to stopping violence. And in fact, you look at societies that have prohibited hate speech, and it's not as if they have less violence. There's even an argument that says that it's much better to let ideas be expressed than to suppress them and have them go underground and gain popularity by virtue of that.
Something that kind of struck me is that it seems like Antifa has an inherent hypocrisy in the way they go about projecting their message, that by limiting free speech of people like Milo Yiannopoulos or Ben Shapiro, they're kind of fighting free speech in the name of tolerance, it seems like to me. And I was wondering if you have a similar thought or if you can elaborate on that.
Of course, Antifa is an anarchist group. It's hard to attribute an ideology to an anarchist group because it's the very definition of anarchism that it rejects ideology. But I think that what free speech rests on is a belief in tolerance, that we should be tolerant of views other than ours, that the only way we can have the right to speak tomorrow is to protect the speech we don't like today.
If you could talk a little bit about the Citizens United case, for Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission, and I was wondering, do you think that the Supreme Court was right in saying that money is a form of free speech?
In 1976, in Buckley versus Vallejo, the Supreme Court said that spending money in election campaigns is speech. I disagree with that. I think spending money is a form of conduct that communicates a message. It's not in itself speech. We've all heard the expression, money talks, but I think that's a figurative expression that the Supreme Court took too literally in saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission was a 2010 decision, and there the Supreme Court held that corporations have the right to spend unlimited amounts of money to get the candidates they like elected or the candidates they want defeated and oppose them. I'm very critical of Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. I think it ignores the tremendous inequality in wealth in our society. Corporations always could spend money in elections. They just had to create a political action committee to do it. What Citizens United means is that corporations can spend money out of the corporate treasuries and do so in unlimited amounts to get candidates elected or defeated.
Do you feel that that has a way in harming our own form of free speech by supporting candidates who are more like-minded to us that we're going to vote for? Do you think that in a sense that has harmed our free speech because we are not paying for that speech with the thousands or millions of dollars?
My fear is that when there's a huge amount of corporate money in an election, it will drown out other speech. I worry of the candidates who will never run for office because they're worried about the corporate wealth that's arrayed against them. I worry in the context of judicial elections that corporations are electing judges who will then do their bidding on the bench.
I was wondering if you could talk about the current administration's role in bringing such raw topics like free speech and hate speech to the forefront of our campuses, cities, and really young people, old people. It really seems like everyone's all of a sudden been engaged in free speech since the administration has come around.
Free speech on campus and issues about it long precedes the Donald Trump presidency. Free speech issues on campus have been around as long as there have been colleges and universities. One of my greatest criticisms of President Trump is the way in which he's changed discourse. There's never been a president who has expressed such nastiness and meanness, and I worry that that then sets an example for people. I think we've got to find a way to disagree with one another without being disagreeable.
In your opinion, how can we go about using free speech to create positive and inclusive communities on campus and in the wider communities that we live in?
The key is that all voices should be heard on campus. To me, it's so important that campuses be a place where everyone feels comfortable expressing their ideas. It doesn't matter to me if it's liberal or conservative or where it is on the political spectrum. And I think we have to be concerned that traditionally underrepresented groups have felt silenced. And we need to take steps to make sure that their voices are heard too.
Mr. Chemerinsky, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
On Wednesday, candidates for the 3 open city council seats gathered in a forum to discuss problems facing Chico. But none of them touched on one of the most integral parts of Chico, its students. So we caught up with the candidates after the forum to see what they could do for the students in Chico.
I think the most key thing to having an attractive place for Chico is for it to be safe, for it to be a good business environment, so there's lots of great jobs when you get that education that you've strived so hard for.
I really think that housing is probably one of the biggest things that we need to touch base on. So making sure that we have proper product and housing type in the mix, and enough of it is going to help bring that dollar amount down.
So I've tried to take the lead on student safety. One of the issues that we did was in 2015 when a Chico State student was killed at 7th and Chestnut Streets. There was a change.org website that was created basically to get the yield signs in the student area changed to stop signs. So I actually put that before council. We were able to change those 2 yield signs to stop signs.
I think one thing that the city can do to be helpful to the students of Chico State is to continue to have the students of Chico State bring their voice to the city council. I think it's very important that we have everybody in the community participate in the political process.
So I think that one thing that's important to just about anybody who values civil justice is the way that the discourse is processed. So I based my campaign on 6 factors, which are respect, civility, openness, inclusiveness, transparency, and empathy. I came up with these after watching a number of young Latina speakers try to get an audience with the City Council about a year ago, and they were rejected out of hand by the council, who wouldn't even agendize their item to agree to speak to it.
In terms of specific things I do, I'd like to see improved lighting in the access way from, say, Nord Avenue onto campus and around campus and then into downtown. I think we need to make sure that students feel safe and secure in our community. We also just need to embrace the important economic impact that students have.
I think what matters more than knowing the issues is being willing to talk to students about the issues that are impacting their lives, being able to engage students to participate in their civic duty of voting, and meeting students where they're at. So spending time on campus and actually providing some outreach and letting young people know that their voice matters.
If I was to have the ultimate power to make some decisions for Chico, one of them would be is that I would blockade the downtown streets on Friday and Saturday night, light them up and provide some kiosk where people could get help without an arrest. So instead of being issued an MIP ticket, if you're too drunk, we just get you home safely. If you're being harassed, somebody steps in and prevents the harassment.
City Council elections are held on November 6th. Click below to check out the City Council election website and see the full interviews from after the forum. To find more Orion news, check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and look for our newspapers on campus.